Hello, everyone, and welcome. Our webinar today is Power Up Your Commute, EV Charging and Community Energy Resources. My name is Vicki Sundstrom. I'm joined by my colleagues Kathleen Stugard and Tyler Dewey. We're the Strategic Planning Unit, the team behind these transportation webinars. We're incredibly grateful to be joined by our speakers and partners from UCSF and our local energy agencies, Clean Power SF, Peninsula Clean Energy, and Ava Community Energy. This session truly wouldn't be possible without their collaboration and expertise. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping notes. Please use the Q&A feature in Zoom for questions related to today's topic. Share what region you live in so that if we need specific answers from the agencies, they know where you are. Also share your name so it's a little easier for us to follow up with you afterwards. Other questions may be directed to the transportation inbox at transportation@ucsf.edu. A little bit of personal reflection. In 2023, I decided to rent an EV before committing to buying one. A friend was visiting, my car was on its last legs, and Hertz had a great deal. So it felt like the perfect opportunity to try this. A couple of days in after I got the rental, we drove to IKEA Palo Alto, thinking we'd charge the car while we were shopping. The non-Tesla chargers, all 4 of them were taken. I searched for nearby options on my phone and found a few, but when we got there, they turned out to be private facilities we couldn't access. We eventually found a charger in an underground garage at Mountain View City Hall. I had to download an app in the underground garage to charge the car. We charged over lunch, and I didn't get much of a range. I did make it home safely and returned the vehicle after a couple of challenging charging attempts. Overall, it was a pretty stressful experience. It made me realize how much there is to learn when it comes to EVs and charging. With the UC Climate Action Plan setting ambitious targets for reducing commute emissions and increasing EV adoption and commuting, there's a clear need to support that transition through education and awareness. Today is about helping people feel informed and confident, not overwhelmed when considering EVs. To help ground this conversation in UCSF's broader sustainability efforts, I'd now like to invite Kira Stoll, our Chief Sustainability Officer and Executive Director, to share a few opening remarks.
Great. Well, good afternoon and hello. Great to see so many people participating today and the growing interest around EVs. Thank you, Vicki and Strategic Unit for the invitation. I think Vicki's story is very telling in terms of what each of us kind of need to do or face or maybe have done already in terms of making this transition to electrified transportation. I think this conversation will really help all of us get more grounded in what it takes behind the scenes in order to provide the kind of infrastructure that's needed in order to support this new wave of transportation in California and around the world, but also those kind of individual choices and challenges that each of us kind of need to face as we think about what our choices are. So just for a little bit of context for UCSF, for those that maybe would like a little bit more kind of overall understanding of what we're doing at UCSF around sustainability and climate action. We've had a long history here at UCSF and across the University of California looking at actions that we can take to make our operations and administration more sustainable, and also through the lens of how do we reduce the carbon footprints and the fossil fuel use associated with our operations and administration. So we all lean into a UC system-wide sustainable practices policy that has 13 sections in it, one of which is a very robust transportation section that addresses commute commute goals around reducing our impacts from our commute, but it also includes fleet, so the vehicles that we own and operate at UCSF, which is about 250 vehicles in total is in our fleet. And in the transportation section, we also look at air travel, business air travel that we do in terms of ways that we might reduce the carbon impacts from that. And I know we're not talking about that today, but I just mention it because much of what we see for aviation changes in the future include both electrification of airline travel along with use of more sustainable fuels. So there's a lot of tracking on that. This year, we embarked on a process of updating UCSF's climate action plan. There's been a series of plans over the years. This one really looked at how are we as a institution, both campus and health, across our multiple sites, which are in San Francisco and Oakland and Fresno and a variety of other places. How are we going to move away from using fossil fuels for our energy use, both in our buildings and in our transportation? And within that, we started looking at the commute. So I just wanted to share a few stats with you as we think about this conversation today. So we track our greenhouse gas emissions each year to kind of understand what our footprint is. And 16% of the emissions that we track today at UCSF are associated with the commute. So that's fossil fuel combustion from vehicles. But want to kind of put that a little bit in perspective. We have a very big population, 45,000 plus patients, hundreds of them on a daily basis. And for our commuters, with all of the amazing transportation demand strategies that the campus has put together, we've gotten our single occupant vehicle commuting down to about 25%. So about 25% of our population is commuting by single occupant vehicle. And that's kind of the framing as we think about the transition that people are going to make personally to their vehicles. How quickly will that 25% of the single occupant vehicle travelers, or less if we can get that down, will make a transition to electric vehicles over the next 20 years and reduce our carbon footprint from it. So I'll just kind of finish with the stats by saying we looked out 20 years. How much is UC San Francisco going to grow over time in population, and how might that increase our carbon footprint? And then we also looked at the impacts of California's advanced clean car standards and the pattern we might see in terms of the transition of people's commute vehicles to electric vehicles. The positive thing is that over this 20-year arc, assuming regulations stay kind of in place and we're adopting at the rate we think, about 50% of the emissions we might see from those commuters out in the next 20 years can be taken care of by this transition to electric vehicle choices. So we're doing a lot of thinking about that. What is the transition going to happen? How are we going to transition our fleet? And then what is it that we can provide at UCSF in terms of EV charging to support our fleet? And then commuters that would need that extra boost when they get here. So I want to turn it over. Happy to talk about it. The Climate Action Plan will be coming out in early May in kind of a final draft form for UCSF kind of review and comment. So look for that. And I will drop into the chat a few links for you about ways to engage more in Earth Month, which is happening right now, how to sign up for our newsletter. The same site, our main site, is where you can find the Climate Action Plan if you're interested in it. So thank you.
Thank you, Kira. Let me briefly walk through what we have planned for today. We'll start with a quick overview of how electricity service works in our region, Utilities 101, to help you ground the conversation. From there, we'll move into EV Charging 101, where we'll cover charging equipment, charging speeds, and what to expect in different settings. We'll then hear from Peninsula Clean Energy, Ava Community Energy, and Clean Power SF on information and resources that can help make EV charging more accessible. We'll close with time for Q&A. To get us started, I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Ben Levy, Campus Energy Manager, Utilities Services. Over to you, Ben.
Thanks a lot, Vicky. Thanks for having me. And hi, everyone. And I just wanted to go over this, and it's going to be really fast, like a fire hose 101. So I'm going to go over some of the major points. But next slide. Or do
Next
I do
slide.
it?
Okay,
Okay.
got it.
Okay. So California has two models for electricity delivery, but the main model is PG&E is our provider here in the north, and it is a publicly owned company which sets rates and invests in transmission and distribution and substations, et cetera, so that we can get our power to in our homes and businesses. And it's all regulated by this California Public Utility Commission. Um, so that's kind of the way we get our electricity. However, what has happened, and I don't know when this all started, but the community choice aggregators, which you're going to hear about today, they all have a different kind of model, but they are part or subset of the investor-owned utility model in that they just specifically aggregate power. They buy solar farms and wind power, et cetera, and then they allow us to purchase cleaner energy from them directly through PG&E, the PG&E system. Next slide. So how it works for an investor-owned utility, and I actually came from a municipal utility before this position. So I know a little bit about it, enough to be dangerous, but essentially the generation, PG&E typically owns some large power plants. They own Diablo Canyon, the nuclear power plant there, some gas and a little bit of hydro. And then they transmit all that power through some very high voltage lines to substations, and those substations then are directly tied into our transformers near your home, and then the meters in your home deliver the energy and you get billed for it. So the key facts are that, it's a pretty large company. It sets the rates through the CPUC, and California independent system operators, which includes PG&E and a bunch of others. They are part of the grid that you hear about that we hope always is stable, but sometimes it has some issues, which I'll show in the next slides. Okay, next one. So the community choice aggregators you're going to hear from today, they're going to tell you, why their energy is probably a little better and why you should be interested in what they do. They're nonprofits. They're basically they're basically underneath local municipalities. So a great way to buy your energy. Okay, next one. So here's the major issue with California Power, and it happens during the summertime. This is known as the duck curve, and it looks like a duck. And but however, the head of the duck is a little bit obscured because of that labeling at the right-hand top. The way this works is during the daytime, we get lots of solar generation, and what that solar generation does is it allows us to have much less usage of fossil fuel types of energy that is generated by PG&E and others. And so that's a great thing. But what happens later in the day is the sun starts to go down and our demand actually starts to go up a little bit and into the evening because people are coming home. Maybe they're charging cars and there's still a lot of need for cooling things down because it's still hot inside of homes and offices, et cetera. So this causes a bit of a strain on the grid, which is something we care about pretty deeply because when you do have a strain, you could have conditions of brownouts and blackouts. which affect our laboratories and hospitals and everything else that we own. Okay, next slide. So the CCAs allow us to maybe reduce some of that reliance on fossil fuels for one, but also they can have an effect on that duck curve by making investments in things like battery storage and funding things like EV charging, smart charging of EVs, which you'll hear about. They also have these power content labels. You'll also hear about that. But the main thing to consider is it's an opt-out model. So you're automatically enrolled in the CCAs. So you automatically get better power unless you choose not to get that. Okay, that's it.
We're going to turn it over to Melanie Jasper. Hi, Melanie.
Hello, everyone. My name is Melanie Jasper, and I'm the program manager for our EV Ready program at Peninsula Clean Energy. Peninsula Clean Energy is one of those CCAs that Ben was just talking about. So we're a part of making the grid a little greener, a little cleaner, and procuring renewable energy for our customers. Yeah, I'm going to talk about PC actually at the end and hop right into EV Charging 101 right now. Go ahead and go next slide. So quickly, I'm going to cover a little why are we talking about EV charging, why invest in EV charging, quick intro to types, levels, equipment, where are drivers charging today, where do we need to install charging to meet those needs. We're talking about multifamily specifically because that has its own unique challenges. And then I'll touch on some new kind of innovative charging technologies that are out there. All right, so in terms of why we're talking about EV charging, this saying, across the industry that if you build it, they will come. And I think we receive a lot of questions, especially in my work when we're talking to property owners. Well, we don't have that many EV drivers yet. I don't know if it's worth installing EV charging right now. But what we see is that when someone knows that they have a place to charge their car, they're more likely to purchase an EV. And we've seen that even with the projects we've completed. One of our properties, they installed 90 outlets. They had an outlet for every single parking space in this apartment unit. They're double the number of EV drivers that year. They went from 3 to 7 within the first year. So we definitely see that this adoption, it really helps to have those chargers available. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So this is just a brief intro, the different types and levels of charging. You'll hear this all throughout anyone talking about EV charging, level 1, level 2, level 3. What does that mean? So we have our waterfall analogy here, or water analogy. I think it helps to visualize. So level 1 is what you might call a trickle charge. This is your home faucet. Level 2 might be about the equivalent power of a garden hose. Or a fire hose even, depending on the power of that specific level 2, but your DCFC, or that's your fast charging, that's also called level 3 charging. That's like a waterfall. It's just such an extreme amount more power compared to your at-home level 1 or even level 2 charging. Go ahead and go to the next slide. This just breaks it down a little further. And then again, where are you going to encounter these sort of charging levels? So level 1, low power, level 2, that's the way most people charge at home. So you can see here in this picture, it's like a standard 110 outlet. Plug that in, that's your level 1 charging. A significant number of EV drivers, if they live in a single family home, that's how they plug their car for 90% or more of their driving needs. It could be that simple. Level 2 are the public chargers. So I think I saw in the chat some comments about charge point chargers available at UCSF locations. So that's like your level 2 public charging. This is gonna get your car full in a couple of hours. So this is still, you're gonna see these chargers somewhere that you're gonna be parked for a little while, whether that's shopping, at work, at the gym, at school, and so forth. Where fast charging, again, this is your quick top off. So the DCFC fast charging, that's gonna be the most similar to like a gas station experience. You're pulling in quick, you're parking there for 10 minutes or so while your tank gets filled up quick. Go ahead, next slide. So just to help understand some of this equipment as well, when I'm talking about just using an outlet to charge your car at home, I wanted to mention for those of you that maybe don't have an EV, this standard charging cable comes with the purchase of most electric vehicles on the market, and that's standard practice. So again, if you have a place, if you have an outlet within reach of where you park at home, it's very easy to purchase your EV, plug in with that standard outlet. And that can work for a lot of your charging needs. A lot of these outlet or these standard cables, like I'm showing now, come in level 1 or level 2 options. And you can see there might be some different adapters, and that level 2 charge is just going to be a slightly faster charge. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. All right, so to picture, so again, last slide was outlets. This is, you could just have an outlet existing in your wall, plug in the cable that comes with the car. But what if you want to install a level 2 charging station? So some people do choose to put these like in their home garage. It's kind of a more advanced, going to be a faster charging option for someone that wants that at home. But you'll also commonly see these models again in public charging with a medium to long couple hour dwell time. And when we're talking about level 2 charging station, it's often something that, there's the power module mounted on the wall, and then it has the cable attached with the connector that you're going to plug into EVs. Let's go next slide, and we'll talk a little bit more about those charging connector types. This you'll hear a lot about in the EV charging industry. I think mostly the back and forth really has been between this J1772 type plug on the left, and then that North America charging standard there, in the middle. And both of these models, so these are the two most common models you'll see in EVs in the United States market today. And also this is the model you're most likely to come up to if you're pulling up to a public charging station. There are adapters too that you can use between. So if you have one or the other and you want to use the opposite charger, that might be an option for you as well. And go ahead and go to the next slide. Okay, so now I'm gonna switch a little bit away from equipment and get into like where are people charging their vehicles and what does that experience look like for our EV drivers? What we see, so this was a survey of Peninsula Clean Energy EV drivers that we did last year, and the good news here is that the vast majority of EV drivers are doing a lot of their charging at home. So 77% of those surveys are doing almost all their EV charging at home. And we see like when we ask them what describes your home charging setup, a lot of folks are charging on either a standard 120-volt outlet at home, or they have a high power 240-volt outlet. So that would be your level 2 outlet. And for those of you who are wondering, like, what is that? Is that something special that I'd have to install? That would be your same as like a dryer outlet. So you can imagine if you have a dryer in your garage and that outlet. And there are actually load splitters that people will purchase to share the power with their dryer at home. So yeah, and we see this again, this is something that people really love about purchasing an EV is that you never have to go to a gas station again, or they're only going to go to that public charging station when they have a longer commute, or if you're driving up to Tahoe for the weekend or something where you really need to stop in a top off. Otherwise, a lot of that charging is just happening at home with a standard outlet. You can go on. Thank you. Okay, so if drivers are charging at home, that leads us to a very important challenge within the field of EV charging, which is that there's an inherent inequity here for those folks who live in single-family homes compared to folks who live in multi-family properties. In single-family homes, most single-family homes already have an outlet that's within reach of the driveway. And so the majority of drivers, if they're in a single family home and they're making that decision, if should I go and should I purchase an EV, they they could just use this standard outlet. They don't have to install or do anything differently. That's not the case for multifamily, right? Even if you do live in an apartment or a condo and there is an outlet, it's likely that the property owner would say, no, don't touch that. You can't use that for EV charging. And generally, there isn't any widely available charging solution unless the property owner chooses to take that project on. And even then, there's this question, this complexity of, okay, well, the property owner installed all these outlets. How do you make sure the right person actually gets the bill for that charging usage? I'm going to get into that a little bit further. We could go to the next slide. All right, and so just briefly here before I get too much into some of the electrical, PC EV Ready, we really recommend this assigned outlet model for multifamily EV charging. And we receive all sorts of calls like property owners saying, oh, well, can't I put a fast charger in for my residence? But you don't want a fast charger for multifamily, right? Really, because the people come home, they park their car, and they go inside for the night. And they're there for at least 8, 9, 10, 12 hours. So there's no reason to have a fast charger somewhere where someone's going to be parked for that long. So we really recommend doing this. Put an outlet in every single parking space, go for a more coverage, lower power option. It's a lot cheaper per port compared to other options, and it leads to a much better charging experience for those drivers in multifamily. It's similar to the single family home experience. You just come in, plug into your own outlet, and leave the car there overnight. We can go on the next slide. All right, so yeah, this question of who gets the bill for EV charging, right? It becomes a lot more complicated when you're at a multifamily property. And the reason being is that, there's more than one electric bill there. So in this picture, this is what we call a meter bank. So anywhere like a multifamily apartment complex, HOA condo building, you'll see these sort of this sort of thing. So each one of these meters is, reading the electric usage associated with a different apartment building, right? So that way, everyone in this apartment, they get their own PG&E bill for what their own apartment uses. And then there's what we call a house meter, and that's the one paid for by the property owner as a whole. That's running your gym, your garage doors, your entry halls, and all of that. The problem is that EV charging is typically installed by the property owner on the house meter. And so the property owner needs a way to collect, that cost back, collect a fee from those drivers who use the chargers. Otherwise, they're left with this high PG&E bill from all the charging. And I'll go on to the next slide and get into how we do that. All right, and so this is why for EV charging, especially at multifamily, we have what is called a smart charger, right? And again, also a smart charger, it's the same as what you're going to see for a, at UCSF campus, for example, the same as public chargers. And this is a charger, it's connected to a network, and it's served by a technology provider who is managing that charger and collecting payment, typically via an app. So this is kind of our typical business model for EV charging. And it's just important to note that, for multifamily properties, this means that charging, it must be set up somewhat as a business. It must have a service provider. There must be this third party who's collecting the charges so that each person is paying for the electricity that they use. And an important challenge here, actually, too, for multifamily is that this leaves the property owner in charge of the price for that EV charging, which is a risk for multifamily. Even when charging is made available, it can often be more expensive than other options. Go ahead and go to the next slide. All right, so this is just, I'm going to start wrapping up our technology section here. I know I've thrown a lot at everyone. This is also some technical information, but it's really exciting to us because there's a few options out there that are changing the game in the EV market and bringing even more options for these like multifamily EV charging properties. One is direct wiring. So if you remember that meter bank I showed you with all the different apartment buildings, There is new technology that's making it possible to directly attach EV chargers to every single one of those individual separate apartment meters. It's a little more expensive up front, as you can imagine, because you got to tap into every single one. But that way, each driver, they plug in, they're charged directly on their home bill. There's no third party. The property owner isn't involved. It's a lot smoother of a charging experience. The other very new option we're very excited about is called virtual submetering. This is where the charger actually communicates directly with the utility. And similarly, similar experience, the driver just plugs in and then the electricity appears right on their home electric bill. But in this case, it's happening directly with the utility. So Peninsula Clean Energy EV Ready, we're always monitoring these options and keeping track of how the EV charging marketplace is changing. And the priority for us really is trying to lower ongoing costs for our drivers and our service territory by investing in those solutions that will have a lower cost, lower service fees, lower markups over time. All right, we can go in and go to the next slide. All right, so I'm wrapping up our EV charging section 101 here. I'm moving straight in. I know that the other CCAs have introductions after us as well. I'm going to start off with the Peninsula Clean Energy CCA. I normally wouldn't even put CC up there, but I know we just had the intro and how utilities work. So again, CCA, that's Community Choice Aggregator or Aggregator. Sorry, we're a locally run, locally led electricity provider. As you can see on the model here, PG&E still owns the distribution lines in our service territory, but PC, we're buying the electricity that's ultimately serving our customers. A big part of our mission and why EV charging is expanding access to these sorts of solutions and making energy more affordable. So EV charging is a part of that increased access to these clean energy solutions. Can go ahead and go to the next slide. All right, so how is PCE investing or reinvesting in our community? So as a non-for-profit organization, this means that anything we make from the sale of electricity gets reinvested through community programs, and that's part of my job here. We've invested in a significant number of programs from electrification, from building efficiency, and a whole slew of things, but clean transportation-wise, some of more exciting projects. The big one was we were a big part of the Caltrain commuter rail going 100% clean energy. That was very exciting for us when the new Caltrain electrified. But we've also, even if you're driving up and down the peninsula, you'll see some of the solar and storage projects going around on community centers and other public building locations where we've helped electrify those locations. Can go ahead and go to the next slide. In terms of our EV Ready program, that's the EV charging program that I manage. So we help property owners from, again, all sorts of buildings, from multifamily to public charging, workplaces, community colleges, lots of different sites. And the way that we help install EV chargers is twofold. So one is through incentives. We have funding available to help install these chargers. And the second is through technical assistance. So we provide technical consulting services where property owners can come to us and receive a one-on-one evaluation of what their charging options are for their site. We can go ahead and go to the next slide. And here I just have some highlights of projects completed to date. And just on this too, Peninsula Clean Energy EV Ready. We've been doing this program for about 5 years now, and we've installed over 2,000 chargers actually across our service territory. And we don't plan on stopping. We're going to continue at least for the next 4 years here. We see EV charging as a huge part of, beginning that energy transition and making electric vehicles more accessible to everyone, and we'll continue to invest in that. We're going to go to the next slide. Here's several more. These are more public-facing chargers across our service territory, school districts, Second Harvest, hotels. You'll see more and more chargers available all across. All right, we can go to the last slide. That's it. All right, that's the end of my time here. Thank you all. Please feel free to reach out to us directly if you have questions for Peninsula Clean Energy. And I think otherwise, the next speaker, I believe, will be Sherry from Ava.
Thank you, Melanie. Hi, everyone. I'm Sherry Zek from the local development team here at Ava Community Energy, and our team builds out clean energy programs in the communities we serve. Thank you all for having me here today. So I'm going to keep the background on Ava pretty brief and really focus on EV-related programs we offer. Ava, we are a not-for-profit CCA. We launched in 2018, and we're also formerly known as East Bay Community Energy or EBC. As Ben and Melanie already mentioned, CCA, we build and buy from clean power plants and then sell the power to our customers with PG&E delivering it. So if you live in Alameda County or San Joaquin County, there's a really good chance that you're already a customer and we're your electricity provider. I saw in the chat earlier that there are folks that live in Oakland, San Leandro, Emeryville, and some other cities in our service area. So happy to see that. Currently, we serve about 2 million residents and businesses in Alameda County and also the cities of Tracy, Stockton, Lathrop. The only exception is that we don't serve the city of Alameda. And this May, in just a few weeks, actually, we are going to have a little more than 60,000 more accounts in unincorporated San Joaquin County that will also become legible in our service area. Next slide, please. Thank you. So why is Ava involved with EVs? In our service area, transportation remains still one of the biggest source of air pollution. And honestly, charging an EV is not just about sustainability, but it's also just way cheaper than gas. And as Melanie suggested, one of the biggest challenge though is people don't have a place to charge. In Alameda County specifically, nearly half of the households that are in here are renters, and most of our housing stock is also more than 50 years old. So what that means is that these buildings really just weren't built with EV charging in mind, and a lot of people aren't really able to charge at home. And there's also plenty of incentives out there to help you buy an EV. So Ava decided to focus on making EV ownership easier by focusing on the charging side of the equation, especially for multifamily. And we have two most relevant programs, both situations, one for home charging and then one for public charging as well. So for those who are thinking of purchasing an EV or already have one but can't really charge at home, we're building out Ava Charge. This is our network of public fast charging station, all powered by renewable energy. To connect it back to the EV Charging 101 brief session, our network are all level 3 chargers, so that can pull even more power than level 2 and therefore charge even faster. And we're placing these chargers intentionally near multifamily housing in workplaces, transit, and also near amenities. So not just by highways, but also where people are already living. We have our first station right now active in downtown Oakland. There's a photo right there showing them all shiny. It's in the City Center West garage on Jefferson Street. And there's 31 fast charging connectors there. It's open 24 hours. It works with every EV on the market. And parking is waived while you charge. This site is actually the largest non-Tesla fast charging site in Northern California, so we're super proud of that. Right now, we're actually for a limited time running our first charge free, so I wanted to just plug that in case folks are interested. If you use the EV Connect app and use the code PVWP, you would get your first charge free there. And usually you don't even need to use the app. You can pay with a credit card or other forms of payment. But for the first charge free, you would have to use an app for that. Next slide, please. Okay, so smart home charging program. If you know you may be able to charge at home or are currently charging at home, thinking that that might be for you, then Ava Smart Home Charging might be of interest. It is a free managed charging program for EV and plug-in hybrid. You're eligible for this program if you are an AVA customer charging at least one electric vehicle or plug-in hybrid at home at least once a month. How does this program work? So if you think about it, most people would come home from work, they would plug in their car and don't leave again until the morning. That's usually around 10 to 12 hours of your car being plugged in. And your car doesn't need those 10 to 12 hours to actually fully charge. It only needs a fraction of that. So there's a big window where your car is just sitting there, really doing nothing much and just sitting there. And so with this program, you sign up through the OptiWatt app. OptiWatt is our partner for this program, and you tell the app exactly when you need your car ready by. Say you go to work at 7 a.m., so you would want your car to be charged by 7 a.m. so you can be fully charged for work. And the app then figure out the cheapest and lowest carbon hours within that window to charge. So instead of charging the second your car is plugged in, the app figure out which hour is the least expensive and the lowest carbon hours to charge. And waits and also charge smarter during that time. And after setting this all up in the app, you really don't have to do anything, and the car will be charged fully in the morning. And what you get with this program by joining is up to $75 in one-time reward, $25 annually per vehicle, and also estimated saving of $140 in electricity bill savings since you're shifting your charging away from high costs and high carbon hours. Next slide, please. So that's it for me. I would say if you're interested in our program, first, if you're not sure if you're an AVA customer, definitely check out our Who We Serve page with the link there. We can also look at your PG&E bill. If AVA shows up under your generation charges, you're with us. Also included the EV program resources link there that has more information about these two programs I just shared, as well as other EV related resources that we have. So that's it for me. I'll be here for Q&A at the end as well. I believe I'll be passing it to Lauren.
This is Pam. I'm also joined by Lauren. We are with the Clean Power SF team, which is San Francisco's CCA. I'll first just kick us off with just a quick overview of our services, and then we'll pass it to Lauren to go over some EV charging incentives. Next slide, please. So the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission, or SFPUC, is a city department and publicly owned utility. The SFPUC operates Clean Power SF to provide cleaner electricity to San Francisco residents and businesses like you all. In addition, we also provide essential services like high quality drinking water across the Bay Area and maintaining sewer and wastewater treatment plants within San Francisco. Next slide, please. So focusing more on the energy side, Clean Power SF launched in 2016, and we serve over 385,000 customers here in San Francisco. As mentioned, CCAs allow the city to purchase cleaner electricity, while PG&E will continue to deliver that power and handle the billing. So for a Clean Power SF customer, your bill will have two separate sections, one for PG&E delivery charges and one page for Clean Power SF generation. Next slide, please. This here shows our power content label. You can think of this as a nutrition label for our two electricity service options. Most San Francisco residents are automatically enrolled in our default green service. That's noted on the left-hand column, which is 89% RPS eligible renewable energy. Customers will also have the option to opt up to super green, which is in the middle column. This is our 100% renewable option made up of about 50% wind and 50% solar energy. Also to note that a majority of our energy is sourced here within California. And then next slide, please. This is just a quick snapshot of a typical residential EV rate. You can see that electricity prices will vary during the time of day, where peak hours 4 to 9 p.m. will be the most expensive when demand is the highest. And then off-peak hours, such as early mornings or late evenings to overnight hours, are going to be the most affordable times to either charge your vehicle or use electricity. So now I'll pass it over to Lauren to go over EV Charge SF.
Thanks. My name is Lauren Katie with the EV Charge SF program. The EV Charge SF program design was very intentional in trying to do two things. So maximize the number of parking stalls served at a site, ideally using the electrical capacity that's already available, and encouraging charging that's affordable for drivers. The basic program offering is incentives for installing EV chargers with optional technical assistance when installing chargers, at least for parking stalls. The main eligibility is Clean Power SF and Hetchy Power customers in buildings with 5 or more units. So if you could move to the next slide, please. So here we have the incentives for existing buildings. We offer incentives for multifamily, affordable housing, and non-residential. We actually supported the UCSF Illinois Street Garage installed 21 level 2 chargers subsidized by the SFPUC's EV Charge SF new construction program. But for this presentation, we'll focus on the multifamily with 5 or more units. So incentives for level 2 chargers are $4,500 per stall, up to 75% of the project cost. We also have incentives for level 1 and level 2 outlets, $2,000 per stall, up to 100% of the cost, as well as future proofing with conduit at $250 per stall. And here at the bottom, we also have an additional $500 for direct wiring, which Melanie covered. That would be wiring the charger to an individual residential unit, and $250 for power sharing. In terms of the overall incentive cap, per project, it's $100,000 per program year. But on the other end, if you want to install one charger, our program can accommodate that as well. So if you could move to the next slide. And here we have additional resources available on our website, including some really helpful fact sheets in our program handbook that details more eligibility. And if you do have any questions or are interested in a project, please don't hesitate to reach out to our power programs at sfwater.org email. And I'll pass it back to you, Vicki.
Thank you, Lauren. Q&A. Let's get into the Q&A. As we said earlier, let us know which region you're from when asking questions. We'll keep track of the Q&A and see how we can put together future programming around this topic. And then share your name, not anonymous, so we know how to follow up with you. Tyler and Kathleen, what do we have going with questions?
Yeah, I think my one question is, thank you so much for all of this fantastic information. What are my next steps? What do I need to think about next if I'm like, okay, I think I'm ready to kind of seriously explore adding a charger to my home? I'll throw that out there to one of the city ones. Let's just say I live in the peninsula.
Melanie, you want to take a stab at helping
I
Kathleen?
apologize. I cut out part of that question. Can you repeat it for me, Kathleen?
Yeah, the question is, thank you so much for the information here. You've got me closer to really exploring how do I absolutely do this. And so what are my next steps?
For purchasing an EV? Yeah. Or
for being able to install something into my home. I've been charging at other external charging locations, and I am now curious and intrigued and motivated to actually do the charging at my home.
Yeah, definitely. So if you live at home and you own your home, again, the easiest option is if you have an outlet within reach of your driveway or parking space, you can plug into a standard 110 outlet with the cable the vehicle came with in your car. If you want to get up to a level 2 and charge a little faster, I would honestly recommend going like the dryer outlet option. I would check for an outlet that's rated for EV charging. But yeah, you could probably have an electrician come out and install one of those for you for like $1,200 or something, to run the raceway out to right by your parking space. Similar for if you wanted to install a level 2 charger, except for you're gonna have the cost of the charger itself on there. So you might be looking at like $1,600 or something to have that come out.
Any other questions in the Q&A? I haven't been keeping track of the questions.
Yeah, another question. I think you might have handled it on the slides, but are there any incentives that homeowners can access from any of your organizations that would help mitigate the cost of installing the EV chargers?
We don't have incentives for single family homes, but I do know that some CCAs do. I don't know if any on this call, I believe Marin might. So I would say like check if you live somewhere where you know that you have a CCA, definitely check out their website. I believe PG&E might have had some incentives for this in the past, but I don't think they do anymore. So I would say it doesn't hurt to check with your local electricity providers, see if there's something there. But yeah, I don't know of a lot of current programs for single family homes.
We have a question here about what does it cost to fully charge an EV? Any sense of what that would look, and I think we probably need to explain that most cars, like you would probably get to 80% and leave it at that, right?
Yeah. And well, there's a few considerations here. I'm happy to take on this question too. I think so. I would mention first off that most people are not often charging their vehicle from completely empty to completely full in one sitting. The more common use case is to come home every day, plug in and top off. So you're really going from 60% empty to 80%, or so 60% full to 80% full on most of your charging sessions. But just to throw some like cost numbers out there. So a good rule of thumb I've heard is that consider 10 cents per kilowatt about the equivalent to $1 per gallon of gasoline. So if you pull up to the public charging stations and it's 60 cents per kilowatt, that's about $6 per gallon of gas equivalent. That would be for like your Tesla or your modern mid-size, vehicle, right? So at home, and this is another reason why we love people charging at home. At home, your electric rate tends to vary from about 20 to 40 cents per kilowatt hour. So you're $2 to $4 per gallon of gasoline. It's part of why we're still loving electric vehicles, even with how expensive electricity is here in PG&E's service territory, right? It's still cheaper than your average gallon of gas. Now, for public charging, there's all sorts of complications, right? Again, the cost depends on the property. And also you have to consider that this is like an investment at this point. It's a business investment, and a lot of folks need to recoup some of the initial investment, which is why you'll see higher prices. So it's not uncommon in our service territory to see 80, 90 cents, $1 plus for EV charging, public options. So I would say, it's definitely something to look at and consider, especially if that's a charger you're going to need to use often. Look for those that are in the 60, 70 cents or less options, right?
Yeah, I can chime in also with the public charging option since we have a network of chargers we're building right now. For us, our off-peak cost is at 49 cents per kilowatt hour and then 54 cents per kilowatt hour. So definitely less than the 60 that Melanie was suggesting as the cheaper tier for public charging. And if you say you use common size, mid-size EV, of about maybe 65 kilowatt as a baseline, then the breakdown of that, if you were to charge it from, say, 30% battery to 80%, since most people don't go to 0% quite as much, then off peak, that would be around maybe $10, and at peak, maybe $11 around. So just to give you that was a very rough math in my brain right now, to give you an idea of how much that would cost.
All right. We have a question here on who is the provider or service in Vallejo or Solano County. I'm assuming there's another CCA there.
Yeah,
We
there's
don't
both
know.
a Marin Clean Energy and a Sonoma Clean
Uh-huh.
Power. I'm guessing Vallejo would fall into one
Okay.
of theirs. I'm not quite sure.
Right. We had to kind of pick the top counties that people commute from because you can see it's a little bit to get everybody's presentation in an hour. But we'll see what we can find out. But we don't know who to follow up with because that question was anonymous. Are there any incentives for purchasing an electric vehicle? Or is this solely out of the EV companies that do I wasn't expecting that you guys were doing it, but are there places that people can look at to figure out what incentives there are to do EVs?
Yeah, so I mean, if you live in Peninsula Clean Energy territory, you're welcome to call our hotline. We actually do have like a one-on-one support for this that you can chat and get their recommendations. But I would say, yeah, there are some different programs. We also have a used EV incentive. I believe some of the other ECAs have a UC or used EV incentive. They might be like income qualified or other requirements. So I would say yes, definitely look around for what's out there. But yeah, it would depend on where the question asker lives and other requirements, right?
Okay,
I'll also drop the link. We have a rebate and incentive finder for our service area. So you can plug in your zip code, your city, your household size, and your household income, and some other information, and that will pop up some um, incentives that you might be eligible for, and then in that you can click EV as your interest, and that will filter it out as well. So drop that in the Q&A.
wonderful. Thank you. And with that, we're actually almost out of time. Earth Month isn't over yet. Check out the UCSF Sustainability webpage for more events and opportunities to participate. Kira did say that she was going to drop links in the chat, so check that out. Looking ahead, Bike Month is right around the corner with bike buses, webinars, and other programs to help support your commute. Look out for that transportation flash with all that information. Thank you again to all our speakers and to everyone who joined us today. And hopefully transitioning to EVs it can be complicated or feel complicated, but I hope that today's webinar helped a little bit with that. Thank you all for being here. Bye-bye.